call the franchise fee.
Oh, sure. Good evening. I'd like to call the school committee meeting October 23rd, 2024 to order. Could I have roll call, please?
Michelle?
Here.
Marie?
Here.
Randy?
Here.
Lisa?
Here.
John?
Here.
Megan?
Here.
Chad?
Here.
Jeremy's present, and Marty had another commitment tonight.
Could we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, my. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I was a little, there's a few things we got called to order, roll call. There's no adjustments to the agenda. I need approval of last meeting's minutes of 10/9/2024.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
I have a second. All in favor? That's unanimous. I need a motion for the consent agenda. We're going to do nominations, appointments, resignations, and transfers. I need
So
a
moved.
Second.
have a first and second. Any questions?
I had a question.
Go ahead, Randy.
Jeremy, I don't know if you can speak to this, but I've been getting a lot of comments about how we determine when sixth grade is involved in sports at the middle school. For example, I see in the winter sports category, there's a grade 6 and 7 girls basketball team, but only a grade 7 boys basketball team. And I wonder how that is determined at this point when we don't have a really good idea on what the head count is going to be for those teams.
Well, I guess we typically would determine those by head counts, and probably last year when this list was updated, that's where it was. Typically when the seasons trim out, Scott or Rico or the athletic director, not Dennis, Carl will come to me and say, hey, we've got this many here, we've got this many here, we don't have enough for a 7th grade team in this piece, but over here I've got 40 girls that want to play or do something. So typically, Randy, it's just basically around what anticipated tryouts or numbers would be. And when our numbers get big enough, we add a team and do things. Dennis, a lot of times, will say, hey, we didn't fill this stipend because there wasn't enough interest, but I've got 150 kids for indoor track. Can I add another coach or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, I just wonder how often it's reevaluated, if it is reevaluated each year or if it's just already set. And I know you can't speak to this, so I guess I'll let it go after that. But like, I just wonder if it's jumping the gun involving 6th graders in the 7th and 8th grade basketball team, at least for the girls at this point. I know it's like this for other sports, and I just wanted to note that people are asking me about why that is, and it's affecting playing time and multiple teams and detrimental to the rec department. And there's a number of different things to consider.
I think it would all be, our decisions would be about interest, of overall interest of what there are. And I think, especially like you take basketball, for example, if you had 16 kids, are you going to add some, so say you have 16 kids between two teams, does it make sense to add a few more? And, my piece would probably be yes, because in a given course of a winter with sickness, illness, and whatever, pretty tough to run a practice if you've got 6 kids come out, or if someone does that. So then you would make that decision to say, well, how many are there in the 6th grade that are interested in those pieces?
As long as that's being evaluated, I think that's just important, making sure that it's necessary to have those young kids. Not that I don't want to have those young kids to have an opportunity, but I know that there are rec leagues and stuff too, and if it hurts the playing time of some of the older kids, I just want people to be aware of that. So that's all I want to mention. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions on the consent agenda? I see none. All in favor? That's unanimous. Our next order is superintendent's report.
Okay, several different things to talk about tonight. First, just a reminder, open house or opening for the new building on the 29th, 9:45 a.m. I know that this is early, but please, if you're watching at home, go in and update any information that you may have on your student information system, because we want to have correct phone numbers and contact information, because it's not that far away before we're thinking about winter weather and the phone calls that have to go out. So we're planners around here. We're planners. John forwarded me an email about band and music that Megan, you and him had a conversation about kids that couldn't necessarily make it to that. And I had a conversation with Doug Stevens and Ann today about what some of their needs are, and I think that's a pretty easy solution for us to fix, just more knowing about and having a heads up. Transportation's more, it's just a couple of hours of people behind the wheel that would help us with that. But I do think that we have to look at how we support our chorus, because that's growing, and making sure that clothing and those types of things, we kind of match, and figuring out what those alternatives are. So I think that's a pretty easy thing for us to solve. On Saturday, we had our Biddeford Pillars of Pride event. It was a huge success, raised $17,000 for the Ask. The Rotary Club of Saco Biddeford was honored for longtime community partners, which basically over time they've invested well over $360,000 in vocational education, $83,000 in scholarships, and $25,000 to support performing arts and athletics teams, and much more. So we're really fortunate to have the Rotarians in our community. I'd be remiss by not acknowledging the work of three individuals, Shelley Kane, Sherry Locke, and Michelle Landry, for the number of hours that they spent securing sponsors, silent auctions, coordinating a flawless event. Very well done, and thank you for that piece. This week is National School Bus Safety Week, and I'd like to thank our bus drivers. Today, we were able to have a barbecue lunch for them. They just play such a crucial role in guaranteeing that students are at school safe each day. So we're grateful for them and thank them for everything that they do. It's always fun to get out and work with them. A reminder that Saturday, October 26th, from 9 to 2 at BIS, a Fall Fun Day will be held to benefit the K-12 Odyssey of the Mind teams. This Sunday, October 27th at 10, the STEM 5K race and candy fun run to benefit the BMS STEM program. Registration link can be found on the website or Facebook page. Tonight, actually, which is October 23rd, right now, or it started at 6, there was a screening of the documentary Screenagers, Under the Influence, which addresses vaping, drugs, alcohol, and the digital age. That was put on for Red Ribbon Week. And then just a reminder that on November 5th, we will be closed here at the high school and be our COT that day for the election, just way too much traffic. And then lastly, as we get to our enrollments, Chris has been doing a lot of work, and you see that that ELL number fluctuates every single day. Between Biddeford and Saco that we oversee, we are the third largest ELL department, kind of any of the cities, and just looking at the support and leadership that we're giving that staff is, it's larger than our special ed department at this point. And it's definitely something that is requiring a lot of different change and whatever. And again, reminder, November 14th, we will have the homeless in school elected official piece in Sanford. We've been working hard to put that together. And I think I might have saw invites starting to head around on that. And we'll be putting together a program to talk about the homeless situation, because it's, Chris, what are we at, 134 right now? Is that what our number was? 134. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for the superintendent? I see there are none. So our next order here is committee reports. Are there any committee reports out there? Not, I mean, we need them listed at some point, so I know what they are, but I know policy has something to say. Is that,
Well, why don't we go policy, finance, evaluation?
okay. Want to start with policy?
I didn't know there was anything to report. I think Chris put a memo together. There's a memo that discusses some
I
of
read
the
it.
items on the agenda later. And then later we'll be making a motion for one of the items on
Yeah.
the agenda.
Okay. Curriculum? Nothing. Policy, what's next?
Finance?
Finance.
Yep. Finance Committee met last Thursday afternoon. We just went over some of the stuff we've been going over the past few months. Discussed updated expenditures, carryover projections, some special revenue stuff. So it was a pretty quick meeting. And I'm happy to talk about SMAC if that's all right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Only thing to mention is that SMAC's meeting next Wednesday at 5 p.m. That's with the Dayton representatives as well. So that's it.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? No? Okay, so we can move on. There's no old business.
Evaluation.
Evaluation.
Oh, yes, the evaluation committee.
So as of today, I've received the board's individual completed evaluations, and I've printed a compiling of that information for the committee vice chair. The next process in all of this is for us to meet and to go over that document to be creating the official evaluation for the superintendent. And that should be occurring by the first meeting in November, which I believe is November 6th. And other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Thank you, Marie. Any questions for Marie? No, no questions. Thank you. We have no old business. We'll go to new business. We have,
Coming
oh,
back to that one.
yeah, go ahead, John.
And the committee's going to be meeting with SACO Board next week, right? Well, November
I think 2 weeks.
6th and November 6th, we're going to their meeting to go over the evaluation.
Or the 11th. We're meeting with them on the 6th. Got it.
Great, thank you.
So when we meet on the 11th, we'll all be put together in executive session, so we need executive session.
On that date, yes. All right, new business, we have a update, this is going to be nice, from Mrs. Pitts and Mrs. Netto on houses system, K through 4.
Well, it's on now. Okay. So good evening. We do have a report for you that's in your packet. I do want to go over just a few things for Biddeford Primary School. I was thrilled that we had 130 participants in the survey and that the level of satisfaction was around 85%. You will see that our document is not as full as BIS, as we are still working on crests. We've written books about each house. We're doing songs for each house. Since we kind of slow rolled this and changed things up, we're taking a slower approach to get this done. Knowing that parents want more information on the house, we're going to offer at parent-teacher conferences information sessions running every 15 to 30 minutes in the cafeteria so that parents can have face-to-face time to ask questions and get the information that they need. Because the information, a lot of it was in the SMORE, and I don't know that everybody reads the information in the SMORE. One of the things we're also doing is having second graders write a newsletter 3 times a year that talks about the house system, because I really think when the students are involved in the writings that we're going to have a lot more people read the information that is happening. I think that's...
Okay.
Any questions?
Is there any questions for Mrs. Pitts? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for putting this together. I guess anecdotally, and I asked for hard data and not anecdotal data, and then you gave it to me, and now I'm going to ask for some anecdotal data. So I'm just never happy, Mrs. Pitts. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But just like the feel of the building, I guess what I'd ask is like, what do you think people are thinking like the biggest pluses of the house are, and like the biggest drawbacks? What would you say?
Well, the plus, when we get there, again, we're slowly doing this
Yeah.
because we're missing 4 classes that are at JFK. So we haven't gone in full force like we would. We're hoping that once we start building and we have the song and they're participating in Tiger Pride with the house things, that's going to bring the kids up to talking about it more at home and being more excited about being in the house. We have data meetings going on this week where we're talking about sharing students so that we can meet their academic needs better. That's going well. The only struggles we have right now aren't around the house system. It's around the change of the dynamics of the students and the needs of the students, and it's a challenge for our staff, for everybody.
Are you getting any feedback about, like, because it's pretty, you're inclusive with the house, right? Like, you're with them for recess and for lunch and those pieces. Are you getting any pushback about that from parents or kids?
Just a little, and
Okay.
we are going to try to do a recess with just kindergarten once a month, first grade once a month, second grade, kind of that
Great.
last week of the month that we do Tiger Pride. Also do that in celebration, which hasn't been made public yet, but if you're watching, you know that in advance.
Spill the beans. Sorry.
That's why people should watch. You just might learn something.
That's it. Anybody else? Marie?
Margaret, I was at the kindergarten, or not kindergarten, the Grandparents Awareness Week, and one of the things I noticed was there were little name cards of people that were in charge of each house. So could you explain how the system of teachers or staff is coordinated within the building and how they meet and go over overall from the leader to the team, and then how all of that works?
Okay, so my school support team are the house leaders. The school counselor, social worker, instructional coach, assistant principal, and somebody who I'm forgetting. But they're in charge. Like today with the late stay, we had house meetings where everybody's part of a house, so the UA teachers were also part of the house, and they met to make these data plans and how we're going to meet the needs of the students. So the adult that's the house leader, we're trying to do more of the work, not to put one more thing on a teacher, but to say, here, we've done this, we've done that. What do you want to be part of? What do you want us to do? We have those meetings with me and the house leaders every Monday morning to see where everybody is, what we need to do, and that's just how we facilitate it.
So you have a leader, you have the staff team, they meet, and then do they take that information, and then do you have like a leadership team where then you all meet with them?
Right. My leadership team meets on Monday mornings.
Monday morning.
Unfortunately, we don't have enough time in our schedules. We have 2 days a month
Yeah,
that we still need to do PLCs and house meetings. But with the BPS schedule, the 6 classroom teachers, everybody's part of a house. Ed techs, special education staff, UA, everybody's part of a house. And the resiliency coordinators, the other house leader, just came to me. Sorry. And now since I said that, I forgot that thought.
Thank you.
Everybody's part of a house, so they meet with me on Monday so we can troubleshoot and do things. And then they take the information back to the house.
great. I think it's important for everyone to understand that it's not just the students, but the staff also have a coordination team within,
Yes.
and there is data floating back and forth to meet everybody's needs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions, concerns? Thank you, Mrs. Spitz. I think the only thing I've heard, like I haven't heard a lot about the houses except the concern, and I'm sure when you have open houses, you can alleviate parents' concerns about second graders not being with other second graders. I think that's like the biggest piece that I'm always hearing about. So hopefully, parents will come and they'll see that, how it works. Is that,
Hopefully, we're going to
Yeah.
offer it.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we also put out our survey the same day that primary school did. We had 67 parents participate in our survey. Overall approval rate and success rate that parents are happy with us was 85% as well. So pretty consistent with BPS. DENs are pretty similar to BPS, but they do run a little bit different at BIS. We don't have house leaders. Teachers at our school have decided to do a shared leadership with that. And so all of the teachers on the DEN are kind of working on the events and the things amongst their team. And so we had DEN meetings today. It was a work late for teachers, so they all got together with their DENs. Again, the main focus today was on data. Like Mrs. Pitts, we completed our data meetings yesterday, and we're working on RTI groups and WIN groups to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all students. So teachers all picked an area of focus based on the students' needs across their team and their den. And so we were making different groups of fluency and vocabulary and different skills that students are needing. We also have enrichment for math and literacy amongst all of the teams as well. So we were working on that today. Again, we have some of the extra things in place, like the songs and things Mrs. Wolstadt jumped on, and we started sort of a little bit earlier in the spring with our tiger dens. So we're still working on some of the rollout of that. It was received as far as feedback that parents aren't quite sure about all of the things that we're doing. So we're trying to do a better job of putting information in the s'mores. I spoke at my parent council meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we too are going to put on some information sessions during parent-teacher conferences next week.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Neto? Yes.
I'll just ask the same question in terms of the feel of the building. Like, what do you think the energy is around, like, what's going really well with dens? And then is there energy about, like, oh, you know, we haven't liked this part of the change?
Kids seem pretty excited about it. Again, we meet monthly. We have our monthly assemblies, and they meet with their den for those assemblies. They sang their song last month. We invited parents when we gave out their awards. So that seems to be going well. Again, we're trying to increase parent participation. Our chorus club is going to be singing at our December assemblies. So again, we're trying to sort of rally and wrap around that. Again, the kids are excited about it. Parents, I think, don't know fully about all of the things that we're doing yet.
Yeah, great.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, next is the integrated credits for BHS and COT.
All right, so for Martha, Mandy, and Paulette, for any of them to jump in on this, one of the things that was passed during the last legislative session was basically an act to provide career and technical education students with credit towards high school graduation, which they've always had credits. But I'm going to give it just a simple piece. It's like one could argue, and I would argue, and I think we argue that here, is that you can be in welding and metal fabrication, and that's really an art, and that it counts as an art class. So some of the really good work that they've done here as an overview, and we've provided kind of a list in there, is that we've aligned our classes to what could be countable graduation requirements, because as you know, the state has certain graduation requirements that you have to have X number of credits in English, X number. And this helps open up schedules and give kids other pathways throughout. And so we felt that it was really important that as not only do we have the new programs there, that we still have some work to do for the alignment on those, but also make sure that this work was presented to you guys with, I believe, the policies coming up tonight, and making sure that as we get our ducks in the row heading towards registrations, which happen in like February, and the printing of the course guide, that it's very clear to parents, students, faculty, what some of the options and pathways are, so that when you're looking at all math classes, you can also see that these classes over here count towards math. Because I think sometimes it gets very separated, like you're two, and really it's part of your high school experience and pathway. What really probably would excite me about this long term is just the continued growth and how you can think about, it can be very challenging for students to get through regular requirements, and they get very locked in on stuff. And I think there's nothing more disappointing than when in the fall, Paulette and I have experienced this, and Martha, where a kiddo may be removed from a vocational course because they have to hit a core requirement. And we've got to do a job to make sure that that's very integrated. So I'd ask those two to come up if I've missed anything in this piece. And I'm sure that Paulette and others have more to add, but trying to bring some clarity, and then also, you know, making sure that as we work with Old Orchard and Thornton and others, that we know that they know that we're granting it for this here, and how do we just create more access?
Yeah, so we've been doing this for a number of years, and it really came about where students were, so 11 years, like started probably 9, 10 years ago. There was a little bit of it going on. We would have students that were pretty successful in our programs, but maybe failing at the high school. But they would need to take that class, that English class or the math class. They would be pulled out of the program, put in their class that they need to be meeting, and ultimately they were dropping out. And so the history of this and the evolution here in this district anyway was a way also to prevent dropout. And if you look at the statistics with a career and tech high school student, the completion rate for high school is in the 90% area. It's very high, as well as for them to complete, if they go on to a 4-year college, they will complete. So our programs are also dual enrollment, so students can earn college credit while they're with us, as well as other industry certifications. And, you know, we're heavy in math, reading comprehension, science, and so those are 3 core issues, 3 core subject matters. And you, in the chart you were given, they're not earning 3 credits for English. They're getting 1 credit, and then they'll also get their credits for completing our program. They do need to complete our program content areas successfully in order to get also that math credit or their English credit or their science credit. And so historically, it's been kind of, you could consider it a credit recovery, where decisions were being made like towards the end as kids were getting close to graduation. Now we're looking at this, there have been several studies made starting even with LD 313, LD 436, passed this legislation to enact it. But scheduling has been a barrier for kids to access career and tech programming. And so this is also another way to reduce that barrier for access for all students, not just some that are selected for it. So, you know, it's another way to provide equity for students to have access to good programming. And also, when you get into the ELA, the math and the science content, you probably don't know this, but our school needs to meet performance markers, and we're measured on those. And there's 3 other performance markers, graduation rate, those types of things. But in the curriculum content area, it's those 3. And if we don't meet our performance markers over a 2 or 3 year time, then we have to develop a plan in order for us. And they pull those markers from the NWEA scores and things like that. So this is not taken lightly for us. It's important. We have an investment in it. I don't want to have to be doing an improvement plan on these performance markers. Anyway.
Thank
Do
you.
you have any
Is there any
questions
questions for Ms.
or-
Bono? Yes, Megan.
Or if also if Martha has
Oh,
anything
did
she
you want
wants
to wait
add.
and listen to what? Okay. Why don't you say what you have to say, and then they'll, yeah.
Thanks. Just in addition to what Paulette has said, this obviously has come to light now because of the legislation requiring us to do this formally by the end of the 25-26 school year. But it's something that we have been doing for years. We've just formalized the process and put it on paper. 8 years ago, we started doing it at APC as well. And I think it's important that while this speaks specifically to CTE programs, that we've also been doing it with our alternative high school to make sure that the kids that are there aren't, you know, missing out on graduation because they didn't get a PE credit their sophomore year, but rather looking at how we might, you know, do mental health treatment and wellness or work credit or, you know, so it's something that we've been doing district-wide. We do when we meet with other schools and look at other schools, we're doing a very good job of this. So this really is a formalization of what we have been doing, and you'll see the policy later that a lot of those changes in it really are there to reflect the work that we're doing.
Thank you. Megan?
So I don't have a question. I just am so beaming with pride at this work, and I just want to explain that. So, you know, coming from a school district that sends kids to VOC programs, and we send some kids here to Biddeford VOC, and you all have been doing this for a really long time. And some other voc programs just offer their voc as an elective credits for that time. And it's a significant difference and a significant experience for kids who are coming and earning core credit classes. And it opens so many doors. And so, you know, as somebody coming from another district and sending students, I just want to, you know, appreciate, you know, what this does, but also the significant amount of work that goes into figuring out how what you're doing in voc programs meets these curriculum requirements. I think that's why other voc programs haven't done this. It's a daunting task to figure out how what you're doing in a welding program and your automotive shops fit into the core curriculums. It's overwhelming, and you've been doing it, and I know Biddeford's been like on the cutting edge of this, and it's just something to be so incredibly proud of. And so I love hearing this, and I just thank you for all that work, because you're right, there are so many students who have had a pathway to graduation that wouldn't, because of like the hard work that you put into this. And I think it just makes it such a more meaningful experience for them, and really it sends more value to what they're learning in their tech programs when they're awarded a core credit instead of an elective credit. And what they're learning in there is important. And so I'm glad that we're showing that with awarding core credit. So just, thanks.
And you know what else is, no, the other piece that's a really good point about that, Megan, is that long-term, as you're earning core credits at a vocational education and not an elective credit, it then opens up more elective credit options for the high school and the vocational center to get more creative about how you fill placements through, so that you can have some really interesting high interest for this group of kids and high interest for this group of kids, because you're not confined by English 9, 10, 11, 12, making sure that you offer it for every single session. So I think that's the real exciting piece too, is that you have the back piece of it where you just can really open up some of those other electives for kiddos that might want to try something very new that's out of that realm.
I also think the other reverse to that is I think that it makes it, gives validation to why being able to read and comprehend what you read, apply what you read, the mathematics piece of why that is so important. There is relevance to that in your life. So I think it has that effect too for kids.
Makes total sense. Any other, Marie?
So I saw on the document that we got with our agenda, we have 3 that are to be determined. Are they all currently?
New programs.
Yes, they're new programs. So we're going to be developing those this year to be ready for next year?
We're working on those. Yep.
Awesome. And then the other thing I just wanted to say is I've been talking a lot about the COT, having visited the building several times, and just so impressed with everything we're offering. And when I'm talking with people, sometimes they're amazed as to what we're offering. A lot of people have just kind of felt like kind of most of the basics from the COTs of the past, and they have been highly impressed with the number of offerings and what kids have the opportunities to engage in. So I think as much as we can, as much as possible, we need to be putting that out there as everything they do, you know, from the electrical, competition last year, we just ought to hit it hard, because I think everyone needs to know all the good things we're doing, and there's plenty here. So thank you for all the work you've done on this.
Thank you. In this agreement will be also, I'll be doing this with other schools, not just Biddeford.
Oh, good.
I'll have to do this with all our sending schools.
Very good. Any other questions? Yes, Chad?
Given the distribution of subjects associated with any one of these programs, is the grading system delineated in that way too, so they know if they're struggling in the art piece of it or the general science or the math piece, so that they can then gain additional help in that area?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. I also have a certified math teacher on staff. He teaches 2 sections of technical math, and then he has 2 intervention blocks. and is available to help students. I also have an Ed Tech 3 on staff. That's a Biddeford employee. And then I have an Ed Tech that Thornton Academy provides to us for their students that are identified as having a 504 or an IEP plan. And so those students can get support through her. And then it's not uncommon for the teachers either to meet with the student before or after school or in between sessions if the student needs extra support. We also would coordinate with their sending schools, depending on what the plan is for that student. We have a lot of collaboration, coordination with the sending schools that those students, if they should have a learning lab and they need extra help in something specific or a specific skill or something, then we would work with them on that. We would provide, if it's a book work, provide the textbook so that they can work with them through that.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
So they have support.
Anybody else? Yes, Michelle?
So quick question. I remember my kids going through the programming book every year and kind of planning out their next couple of years. And I believe, you might have already said this, but since we've been doing this for a while, those classes, as they're listed in the book, also already have these the credits, right? So that they'll be able to help plan. So obviously a school counselor might be able to help do that, but it's easy for them to see in the book as well.
Right, and I think they need to understand, what will be required of them in order to get an English credit or the math credit, as well as their, their program credit.
But it's there
I
with
can
the
tell-
description of the class.
Oh, yeah, we have a
Yeah.
booklet catalog.
That's why.
Yep. It's online. We also have it in paper copy, hard copy, but it's online. It's on our website, school website. And then we usually give, in addition, the guidance council offices, hard copies, so we can distribute those. Yep.
Anybody else? Wonderful, thank you so much, and anyone who knows me knows how passionate I am about COT and programming, and my son actually benefited from that, so it's amazing, and you guys are doing an amazing job. Thank you. Where are we? Oh, we have enrollment updates. That's Mr. Red.
Yeah, so we've been including these every 2 weeks, and I think I probably am just gonna, over the next part of the next couple months, I'll just keep putting one in the consent agenda, just to, because I want people to see how much it can change from month to month or week to week. And, I know that even when I wrote this on the 18th, that the numbers have changed since that date considerably, but as we start to roll into this piece, you're looking at a situation where we're going to be at least another 100 ELL students than we had last fall, which is quite a change for us, and we appreciate you guys giving us the ability to advertise for those positions because we really need it district-wide. I do think that we are getting to the point where we've got to start talking about that being, it is a department into itself within our school department now. It is not just an add-on to somebody's job, because we need to do more curriculum planning, the amount of work that it takes for teachers to test and process things and communicate. It's not, I think when you think about going to register your student that you've done, or you still get some time there, and now imagine doing that with somebody that's not first language or whatever, and the hours that it takes for those pieces is it's a lot. What I would say about overall, we're up, so that's a good thing. From a financial standpoint on subsidy, this is, we're going to see more subsidy come based off these numbers. I think that we need to continue to look ahead of what is happening around any major developments in the city and how that would impact any of the changes in our population. Because again, if you add 100 kids in our system today throughout very, if it's evenly dispersed, that's very little impact. I think the piece of the impact comes with a changing student need that we're presented with. That's very difficult for our teachers and something that we have to consider of the needs of the children that we are facing. The other piece is I started to really look at some of the finer numbers within these that, for those of you who have been on the board, you'll see after we lock in these numbers for October 1, I'll show you a screenshot of like what I have to report to the state and what that looks like. But we're, based off the calculation I did the other day, I'm expecting that free and reduced lunch count to be 62 to 3% versus like 57%, which means that more of our students are struggling, with poverty. And we were doing some work in preparation for the upcoming homeless summit that we'll be doing in Sanford and for superintendent's work, and I felt like some really interesting information is that 20% of all land value in the state of Maine resides in York County. Yet, 13% of all state subsidy comes to York County. So there's 7% right there, and if you look at that number, it's like $84 million would be the gain in that piece. Another piece that I was looking at that I found to be pretty amazing is that if you look at the state of Maine, the average home value in the state of Maine is about $405,000. That's the state of Maine. In York County, it's $503,000. So you're about $100,000 difference in York County. And then when you look at that median sale price, you're at about $480,000 compared to $395,000 statewide. So when you look at that percentage of difference, it just continues to show some of the challenges that we have here, especially if you're in a community like ours that's super high value and super high poverty. And so as we think about our conversations with elected officials and those pieces, we've got to really convey that piece. Because if you look at the federal guidelines, so it's amazing that the federal guidelines for a family of 4 living in poverty that would have been on your old free and reduced lunch applications, $31,000 would put you at the poverty level. The statistic in the state of Maine for a family of 4 to basically be living on ends meet is a little over $99K, okay? And you know that in southern Maine, that's probably a little higher than it may be in Washington County. And so I think that part of the piece that we've got to talk with our legislators and with others is that you look at some of these poverty statistics and when you're talking about a kid being economically disadvantaged, you're talking about that low poverty number. But then you're thinking about all the families who maybe just getting by, and that's still a big gap on top of everything that costs more. So, I'm looking forward to this forum because I think it gives us an opportunity to talk about all of those pieces and really put the data out there about when you talk about staff struggling to hire staff, well, at the end of the day, they have to have a place to live. And so we've been doing some work just on like rents and those pieces so that we can present that information not only to all the school committees in York County and city councils, but to our state elected officials of some of the challenges that go with, well, why, Mr. Ray, do you have openings? Well, there's several reasons that we have openings, and it's not, I think what sometimes is challenging at state legislature is that they have all of these committees together that try to address some of the challenges, but they have very little overlap, and so many of our problems are not you don't fix one piece in isolation and think you've solved it. They overlap many different areas that need to be addressed, whether that be for staffing from certification improvement to cost of living to salaries to, how challenging the job is, and hopefully we can start those conversations with that. So been pretty interesting doing some of these more in-depth enrollment studies and getting ready for this, kind of forum that we'll have.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
Lisa?
Oh, Marie, I'm sorry.
So, Jeremy, I had asked at the last meeting if we could look into a deeper dive into the historical perspective, and I know it's a lot of work. I had gone on to, and I urge all of you to go on the DOE website, and you can call up the data in a 10-year period from 2014 to present. They don't have the current numbers like now, but to look at the bar graph, and above every bar, the specific numbers within these various categories when it comes to demographics, really gives you an unbelievable picture as to the demographic changes that have been occurring in this particular district. And you can plug in other schools and even see comparatively what they're looking at versus what we're looking at. And it accounts for a 10-year period of, giving the state data and them having it archived and posting it into a very easy, bar graph to read. But the numbers really kind of paint quite the picture. And I didn't know how to get beyond that 10-year mark, but just looking at that 10-year period, and I know we deal with what's in front of us now and moving forward, but I think it's important for everybody to take a look at that, and especially, how this has been progressing and where it's brought us today as we meet with those various people. But I urge all of you to go on into the DOE, go to the demographics, and then you can plug in Biddeford and things will come up that show you lots of information in that 10-year period. So take a bit of a deep dive one afternoon when you don't have anything to do.
Anybody else? No, and I would agree with that. I think looking at these numbers and looking at, it's not only the ELL students increasing, but the needs of students are increasing. And you hear that from every administrator and every teacher, that there's high needs within our school. And we want to make sure all those needs are met. And it becomes literally almost an impossible job when you're dealing with non-English speaking students in your classroom. And I know that you would ask kind of for that breakdown, like how many a teacher has in one class, which would be difficult to do obviously at the high school level, but the primary, intermediate, maybe the middle school, and say, well, I'm a teacher that has high needs students, plus I have 5 ELL students. That would make it very difficult. And we have to look at it as a whole and say you can't come up with an answer. I don't know what the answer is. This is what we got to deal with. But how are we going to support the staff in dealing with the situation? And I appreciate you being on it and presenting this to us and keeping us updated as to where the numbers are and what we need to do next. And if it's staffing, that's not just a magic thing we can do. I mean, it's not only finances, it's definitely where are we getting the staff? Where are we getting these people to come in and deal with this? So I definitely appreciate the updates on that as we go, and what you said, Marie, too, to look into.
And Marie and Lisa, the other piece that sometimes people forget is it's not just staffing, but facilities haven't been designed in a way to meet some of these needs as well. And that can, whether it be for simple code upgrades or to meet the, social needs that a kid has. When we talk about mental health support for your high school, well, you need private spaces to talk with kids, and sometimes you just run out of those. And so you have to think about all of those pieces as well. It's like you have staff, but you also have to think about where that staff is going to go,
bring
where
these
they're going
kids,
to work,
yeah.
how you're going to deliver the service. Is the space adequate for that and appropriate for that? Do you have the upgrade piece? So sometimes when you add over here, you also have to think about, now what do you have to do to your buildings as well? Because there's a lot of things that you need to do in that way too. And I think sometimes in schools, when you reconstruct some things and then you think about some of the challenges we have, you did something 5 years ago and now you're facing a whole different challenge or a whole different group of kids that have different needs.
That's definitely happening, and I think, like you said, like some of the ELL students that are coming in, you can't predict it's going to be an equal shuffle. Like, you might have a lot of lower grade levels, and I know the primaries, as of next year, is going to have a lot of students in that school. And we don't know what the enrollment's going to be next year. We don't know where the ELL students are going to be, and if it was another load on that primary school, that number would be a lot for one school. So it's definitely something to keep a watch on, and thank you. Oh, wow, look at this,
Yeah.
we're lighting up over here, lighting up, got a lot of questions. Who
I
do I want to
also
go?
wanna
Okay,
s-
wait a minute now, who do I want to go first? Go ahead.
sorry.
Well, I'll go with you, Marie.
Okay. So, the other thing I want to say with regards to our staff, they're not just dealing with an increase of, MLL students within their classrooms. We have kids with increased needs with regards to poverty, home situations, mental health, special ed. Our staffs have a full load on their plates. And it doesn't matter what classroom you go to, they have a full load on their plates. So everyone needs to keep that in mind. It's not just these numbers. There are several other numbers that are adding to what they deal with day in and day out.
Definitely is true. Michelle?
So I just want to take a step back to the forum that you mentioned. I appreciate all the work you're doing for this forum. You've mentioned, I know we're invited, you've mentioned city, local officials, other superintendents. I'm just kind of curious, do you know if there's going to be other school committees that will be represented?
Yes, we're inviting every single school committee in York County, every single city council, selectman, town council. The Acton's much different, and Dayton is much different than what you have here in Biddeford. And then everybody who's been elected, either re-elected or continue on for state representatives. And then really trying to figure out where I think we have a weakness in our structure is that we do really well talking about our issues prior to elections. And then the election occurs and we get into the throw of things. And then from our end, February, March comes around and we're knee-deep in budget. And one of the things that we're going to try to commit to as superintendents is making sure that we at least either hyper-locally or as a whole county try to reconvene something in the middle of the session, because that's we have staff who are monitoring certain bills. And I think sometimes we get to a point where we haven't had the conversations on a local issue face-to-face about how does that impact the school? Like one of the bills that we know was in session last time was mandatory 30-minute lunch. Well, that really impacts the operations of schools, has major impacts on schedules. And, one of the suggestions that, and I say this loosely, obviously, kind of in jest, is that, boy, I hope that they would have an opportunity to join us at a high school in a 30-minute lunchtime. That's not productive for kids, yet I can see why you might have a pre-K that does have 30 minutes. So sometimes, as an example, the broad brush that gets stroked, that has a lot to do with it. There have been other bills that have been passed in prior year that I really think has limited principals and teachers from other solutions, or to try to and made the job tougher. And we need to be able to explain what some of those things are. And there are things that have passed that have been wonderful. You'll never hear me complain about paying taxes so that all kids can have a free lunch. I think that's a great equalizer that we have. And people need to hear that too. And then there's a lot of people who have many different beliefs that they hear online about schools, things that don't happen. I don't know how many times I explain, and I shouldn't go down this piece. But many times I explain to my friends the things that do and don't happen in schools, and I explain them good reasons why those don't happen, because there are things that protect us from that. And then I walk away and they say, I don't think we believe him. But I think that's the piece that we need to make sure that our local officials, not only from a school committee side, but from the city council as well, of the impacts on revenue sharing. And at the end of the day, we are, as a society, and I'm talking general society, I believe we're running up against a taxation, property tax situation that is, nobody in this room wants to go another 10 years of 3%, 3%, 3%. There's got to be a different structure, and that comes about conversation and about give and pull. And that's where I talk about school subsidy, when we talk about 20% valuation and 13% this. If you guys Google Ed Week in education, I was in an Ed Week article the other day talking about, there is a difference between a community that has 3% free and reduced lunch and that their kids are getting a weight of 1.5 versus a classroom that has 60% of their kids living in poverty. And at some point in time, if you really want to move something forward, it can't be a decision about a spreadsheet. It has to be an ethical and philosophical decision on how you fund schools. And yes, there is a difference. Opportunities that some families have are very different than the opportunities that others have. And we have to be able to raise everybody up. And that's the piece that we're going to really fight for as superintendents, is that during COVID, kids who lived in poverty were funded at a different weight. And then when the emergency status went away, we reverted back to the 0.15. And that makes no sense to me at all of why we would do something that was correct during an emergency and then go back to it just because we have to have the conversation. And so throughout the session, you will continue to hear me advocate for greater funding for kids in poverty, because we need to close those gaps, because if we don't, we continue to deal with the social challenges down the road that cost communities. So, sorry, I get passionate about that one.
It's okay. You're all done? You have any more to say? Okay. I know you could go on and on, but we'll readdress this at another time, if that's all right. Okay. Where are we now? Oh, we're on first readings. You want me to just go list all of these at once? Is there any objection to that? No objection. Okay, here we go. It's the first reading of policy BEA, school board use of email and other electronic communications. JLF-R, reporting child abuse and neglect administrative procedure. IHBAK, life-sustaining emergency care. IKF, graduation requirements. JIE, pregnant students. ACAA, harassment of students. ACAA-R, student discrimination and harassment complaints. I need a motion.
Second.
Oh, wow.
I didn't put my mic
I'm
on,
used
so
to
moved.
being- I'm used to being a John and Marie, Okay, so I've got a first and a second. Is there any questions on any of these policies at this point? Any questions at all? Anything? No? No questions? Are we going on? Okay, so I need a vote. All in favor of the first reading, and that's unanimous. So we're going to have a first reading, and then we're going to suspend the rules if we vote to do that, and then we're going to have a second reading of GCSB, use of social media by school employees. So I need a motion for the first reading.
I have a motion for the first and second.
Okay.
Oh, do you have to suspend it first? How do you have to do that?
Say that one more time.
Motion to read it and then motion to suspend? How do we do
Yes, I'm going to take a first
Okay,
motion. I
sorry.
want to suspend the rule and then take a second motion. Can we do that? We'll do it? Okay, well, we're on the first. So moved and seconded. Any discussion on this? None? All right, I need a motion to suspend the rules.
All right, so I'm going to make the official motion.
Okay, good.
On behalf of the Policy Committee, I move that we suspend the rules and call the committee to have a first and second reading on this policy regarding employees' use of social media. In consideration of recent case law and the pending election and its aftermath, the Maine School Management Agency recommends all Maine public schools adopt a policy on employee social media. We reviewed this 2 weeks ago, and the three of us that are on the Policy Committee endorsed the suspension of these rules for this.
All right, do I have any questions about suspension? John?
So can somebody just explain what the emergency is? 'Cause usually when you suspend the rules to get a second reading, you need to have an emergency. So I just want to know.
Is there an emergency why
what the
we have
emergency
to
is.
have the second reading of this
I
policy?
mean, just because there's an election coming, doesn't mean it's an emergency. We have an election coming all the time. This may not be a presidential one, but what is the emergency?
Does anyone want to speak on that? Do you, Mr. Endorf, want to speak on why this is an emergency for us to suspend the rules?
It wasn't the, It wasn't the sentiment of the policy committee that there was an emergency. It was more of an exigency. This was a MSMA bulletin recommending that boards adopt this policy in advance of the election, anticipating a relatively heated season. This is a policy that's omitted from a lot of policy manuals from school districts around the state, and so they provided this recommendation. I think that bulletin came out in September. Our policy committee met on October 9th, and we used a consensus model to make a recommendation to the board that it be adopted prior to the election. If the board doesn't feel so moved, then we'll just take a first reading and come back to it next meeting.
Okay, so, any other questions? Are we going to vote on suspending the rules? Okay. Yeah, it's on the table. The motion's there, so, go ahead, Chad.
I'm new to this, so I'm struggling to
Yeah.
figure out what's going on.
That's okay. That's what we're...
What's on the table right now, and what are we,
The use of social media is on the table. We approved the first reading. The policy committee would like us to suspend the rules, because normally we have a first reading, and then we never usually do a second reading right off. Sometimes we do in an emergency situation. But they want this to be first and second reading, so it could be in policy immediately.
so we would then go to a vote
To suspend our
it.
rules,
Does
and
that-
then we're going to go to a vote to actually have this as one of our
And
policies.
does that vote require anonymous vote, or is it just majority?
Majority,
Okay,
yep,
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, so Chad, the last time the board was asked to do this was this summer. We had some Title IX regs that were changed on August 1st, and we didn't get the updated policies from MSMA and Drummond Woodsum till about that time. Do you remember exactly the time frame, Michelle? It was about that time. So it was like, these regs are already in effect. We need the board to put these, to codify them in policy, so we asked for that special dispensation. Outside of that, this is something that happens less than every couple of years, I would say, because usually we're pretty prospective in the policy committee.
Thank you, Mr. Endorf. John?
So when we did that, that was an emergency because law had
Yep.
already passed.
Yep, agree, John. Yep.
Okay.
So this is something as more of a recommendation that we do this before the election?
Yeah,
is
it was
what you're saying.
MSMA's recommendation that we have this policy.
Yes.
And then the three board members who sit on that committee were in agreement that.
To send it for both
Correct.
readings?
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other questions or motions on the floor, we will take any other questions or
Just so
things?
I'm clear, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this motion just to suspend the rules at this point? not
Yes,
to
yes, we've
suspend
already
and
approved
take-
the first reading, we're just suspending
Trying to make
the
sure I know what I'm
rules.
voting on, okay.
Yes, so no other comments or concerns? Okay, all in favor of suspending the rules? We have, oh my goodness, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor and 2, and any opposed? 2 opposed. Motion passes. So we are going to have the second reading of GCSB, use of social media. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion and second. Any more discussion? Anything at all? Okay, all in favor? Again, we have the 5 in favor and 2 opposed. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you know what? When you didn't vote for it, I figured you were voting against it. Oh, you could have sustained from the whole thing? Okay, okay. Sorry about that. Well, Who's opposing this? Okay, 2 in opposition.
That's okay.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now we have public participation. Anyone out there would like to speak to the board, please come forward. Hi.
Everyone. My name is Christine Morin. I actually first want to thank, I know I'd put an email out a couple of weeks ago about kind of being involved in the district, or as far as curriculum-wise, K-2, K-4, and there was a response for that, so I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to that, the meetings coming forth. A few different things that I kind of wanted to propose and hope to kind of get it started at the beginning of the year, because things take so long and there's so much to do throughout the year. So one thing is the thinking about and talking about reevaluating the K-3 district policy as far as, or K-5, I guess, as far as the homework. I know that K-3, it was a district policy, but that was when the buildings were much different than they are now. I've seen just through my own 2 kids that have been through, there's inconsistency of, at least when they get up into 3rd and 4th grade of BIS, of teachers that do provide homework, teachers that don't provide homework, do partway through the year. And I know it's a very kind of sticky because the policy is written differently. So I know the teachers do the absolute best they can. It's not a requirement. It just kind of helps them. But I having a son that's come through BIS, now in the middle school, I've seen the struggles that, and I've talked to other parents, and I know the struggles that the kids go through, because some have had nothing. And to go into a middle school, to have, you know, the lack of study habits, lack of like, what is homework? How do I time manage this? How do I, you know, our kids are involved in every which thing, because we're very fortunate there's so much out there for them to choose from. But I just feel like kind of getting into middle school, and then it's like, bam, here's some tests, poof, here's some homework, and you're like, wait, what? For parents, for kids, I just feel like it would be important for them, at least at the 3 to 4 level, to have some consistency of whether it's, you know, a spelling test once a week, or, you know, a math minute, you know, every day or 4 days a week, some sort of something. I know that we work with a variety of different homes and things in just within the community. But again, where we don't necessarily have like the grading policy, it's more where we have like our standard-based policy in the younger grades, you know, so it's not that a kiddo that might be struggling a little bit, maybe they can only do 2 days of homework instead of 4. But I think just starting to instill and consistently give kids that opportunity to start those skills early, to just give them something. And I think even sometimes it's giving the parents that something. You know, I'm sure all of us probably were very traditional based grades, and that's how things were. But we were given the homework. I mean, I remember in kindergarten, I was given the black and white composition notebook. You had Monday through Friday homework. You can choose how to do it, when to do it, but you had to bring that back on Friday. Kindergarten, like that's early. And I understand times have changed, things are what they are. However, I feel like 3rd and 4th graders, they have those skills. They have those opportunities, and we need to give that to them, and we need to give that to them consistently. And I know that, again, the policy has been different, but we're different. The buildings are different. Kids are separated differently. And I think we need to take that opportunity to help our kids be successful earlier, so when they get to middle school, they're not struggling as much as they might be, or at least developing some of those skills. Another, which kind of piggybacks on it, I know that when we get up to high school, we have our traditional-based grades, which is great, and I know that there's so much controversy. I've read a variety of books and studies and things on standard-based, traditional-based. Our schools, our grades, our policies, our colleges, how kids get into them, they're very standard, or they're very traditional-based. And we do, I think, doing the standard-based for a certain number of years, I think is great, because it is really giving the kids the opportunity to develop kind of as they develop, and there's so much that they have and how they're growing. But I feel like waiting until they get to high school to give them that traditional grading system, I think, again, is a disservice to our kids, because they've gone through 7 grades And then they get to, and they're like, wait, what does a 90 mean? What does a 70 mean? What is an A? What is a B? You know, and we can talk as parents, but to the kids, they're like, I don't know what this is. So, and I don't have the like, where can we mix it? I think middle school would be a great, like getting out of your standard base into your traditional grading, maybe even, maybe at the half end of middle school. I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like we can do a better job for our kids. I think it also helps the kids to really have that, you know, I know right now, like my older kiddo, 5th grader has, you know, a math minute every single day, and he has, you know, he's had a little bit of book reports, but it's done at school, and I appreciate that, and I know for some families that's exactly what they need, and some families can support at home, and I get that, and I appreciate that. However, he has spelling tests once a week. Great. Comes home with however many out of however many. I got a 2.5. I'm like, do you know what that means? He's like, I have no idea. Like, they don't, and it's nothing to the teachers, it's nothing to anyone. I think it's a shift, I feel personally, and I know some other parents that I've spoken to feel the same way. Like, we have to help our kids shift. And when they get to high school, I feel like it's too late. I feel like middle school needs some of that. They need to experience that. And for some, it's that little bit of motivation, like, oh, I'm going to score 3s. Like, some kids, I've been through the grading system. I've seen the report cards. A kid doesn't know what a 2.5 means. They don't know what a 3 means. Like, it's very ambiguous. It's like a cloud in the air. You're like, try to catch that. They don't know what it is. There isn't that like motivation to, at least when I was growing up, you know, like get those 90s, get those Bs, get those whatever your kiddo is capable of in whatever grade it is. So I don't know, and again, happy to join the policy or whatever, how that kind of goes as far as making a change or making the talks now. So maybe that, and I understand nothing's going to happen this school year. Nothing happens quickly. I get that. But starting those talks early, getting parents in, getting teachers. Teachers are the ones that know this the best. They've seen it and they've adapted, and we've had so many things happen over the years. But I think we need to give our kids credit. They're resilient kids. They've been through a lot, but look, we just got to let them. We've got to let them be kids, and we have to give them the opportunity to grow the grit that they all have, that I think sometimes we coddle them. We do. I feel like overall in all different countries, America, this is what we do. We coddle our kids way too much compared to other countries. But I feel like I would love to start that talk to be able to give them those opportunities, to have that, to have a motivation for getting whatever the case may be. And something else I just wanted to, and I haven't talked to BIS and or.
I just want
Yeah, sorry.
to caution you on the time.
Okay.
Okay.
As far as we've polled parents on the houses, and it'd be interesting if we could poll the teachers. How are the teachers feeling about it? I can bump this, but I think it's an important thing because the houses are getting started. This was a huge piece today, was the house. But I know I'm over my 3 minutes.
Sorry.
No, and it's totally
I'm
fine.
getting
However,
all
when
these
we had
things.
the cell phone policy months ago, like we went way over. We actually went a 30-minute extension. So I don't know if you need to do something, but I can be a few more minutes and I'm done.
Okay.
But I think the housing system, I think it would be really important to poll teachers to see how they're feeling. I know BPS, like they're within their little grade, you know, they're within their houses. And at least from a parent's perspective, from what I've heard, like those kids stay with those kids all 3 years. And I get it and I understand it, but what about the kids that like it doesn't work for them? Or are those kids seeing the other first graders, the other kindergartners, the other second graders? I think there's a lot of growth that can be, and I can talk with BIS and BPS and some ideas I have, but I know a lot of like parents have been talking to me about it, and I'm like, I'm going to the meeting, I'm happy to mention it. So I just think it would be an interesting thing to poll teachers to see how they're feeling, how things are going at both schools. And
Thank you. And
sometimes possibly making it, if you can make it anonymous, sorry.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes teachers and staff just have that like, I don't want to say something, I don't want people to know what I'm saying if they're, not feeling great about it, but I think it's important to support them however they need.
Thank you. And I'm
Thank you
sorry
very much.
to cut you
I
off,
know
but-
it went over and I apologize,
Well,
but I
equal
think it's
time for
important.
people. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Any other person in the audience would like to come up and speak to the board? Anybody? I see none at this point. There is no executive session.
So
And-
are we allowed to?
Okay, we're going to go to communications right now.
Okay.
So we'll go right to communications. Anyone here? I'm going to go with Megan? Chad?
All right, well then yeah.
Okay.
All right, great.
And then Marie.
Thank you very much for coming up and giving us all that information. I really appreciate it. Off the top of my head, I don't know when our next curriculum meeting is. But it's in November, right? And November, so I'm on that committee. I'd welcome you to come. Oh, Chad and I are on that committee. We'd welcome you to come. That would be great. That would be a great time for us to talk about that. I think you brought up some really exciting things. And then in terms of the houses, I think you brought up some really good points, and those are points that the board's brought up, and I think Margaret answered some of those as well today. So, in terms of, and I don't want to speak for Margaret at all, but I do know that the question's been asked about, like, if there's a kid who maybe isn't feeling comfortable in their house, is there the ability to be moved around? And the answer that we've gotten is yes. Exceptions can be made. So I just want to make sure that, like, that that's an option. And then I agree that there's been concern about, like, if they're always together, can they have some time with other classes? And I think what we heard tonight is that that's starting to get built in once a month with some Tiger time. So that's good. So I think you're bringing up points that, we've all brought up as well. So we're all on the same page. And I appreciate you continuing to bring them up so we can continue to talk about them. The other thing I wanted to say during communications was a shout out to the high school. They did Challenge Day over the last couple of days, and so I have a sophomore who just experienced that, and it was amazing. I don't even know how to describe it. You have mentors that come in and run kids through this process, and it was an emotional and, like, really amazing experience for my daughter. So she's usually when my kids come home from school, I go, how was school? And they're like, good. What was good about it? Ugh, why do you ask me so many questions, right? But, like, the last couple of days, I've had some really, like, wonderful, in-depth, social, emotional conversations that have made my social work heart happy. So, like, shout out to Challenge Day over the last couple of days.
Marie?
I don't know if anyone saw the news this evening, but our soccer team was on the news. Well done to, get to the playoffs, and they featured a couple of brothers, and one of the things that they talked about was something we've been talking about as a board with regards to engagement and of our students and our MLL kids. And one of the things they said, that being on the team helped improve their English. It was one of the statements made by the boys, and it was great to see, and they represented themselves in the school so well, and I'm so very proud of them and the team, so congrats to them. And again, I think as we look to engaging more kids, I think that those answers and that interview is a testament as to why we need to really engage all of our students, but especially kids who are that have language barriers. It is a helper, and I'm just so happy and proud of them. So that was one thing I wanted to mention, and I hope you can all go and find it. And the other thing today, I participated in giving a tour to a Mongolian delegation. They are being hosted by the University of New England and Bowdoin. They will be at a game Friday night at UNE, and they met with the city officials today downtown about local government and elections, and primarily their focus to be here and the grant that they received was to empower women through sport. So my daughter reached out, and being an elected official on the school board side, after they met downtown, she kind of wanted a school side thing and a female representative in there, and we just had a great tour. They met with JR, and he answered some questions, and we toured the school and the school facilities and the COT. They loved the idea of the Victory Bell, and they loved our facilities. They were highly impressed with the COT. It was a wonderful visit and a wonderful experience, and I think we should be proud of what we offer here. They had lots of questions, and it was just nice to put us on the forefront with a country from afar to show them what we do. And they were quite impressed. And again, Dennis met with them and JR, and they just really loved everything about what we do with our students here and what everyone's role is and how we come together as a team to make things happen. So thank you to all of you. JR, thank you for, jumping in and into the tour, and to Dennis, and I had them speak with Liz as well. So it was awesome. So I really appreciate that opportunity, and for Ashley sharing that experience with our school district.
Thank you, Marie. Is there anyone else who would like to share anything? I see no one, so that leaves us to no executive session.
Motion to adjourn.
There it is.
Second.
And you got a second. All in favor of adjourning? It is done. Thanks for coming.